So, dynasties are a lot of fun when everything is done correctly. I mean, there are a lot of teams that have repeated as champions and kept the good vibes going. The Boston Celtics with their 8 straight titles in the 50s, the Bulls with their pair of three-peats in the 90s, um, baseball with the Yankees putting up a clinic with their three-peat They're three-peat in 98, 99, 2000 and should have four-peated, but they lost to the Diamondbacks. Hockey, you rarely see a three-peat anymore. Like, the Habs did win 5 straight from 56 to 60, and the others did have 4 straight in the 80s. But for football, it's like we've never seen a back-to-back-to-back Super Bowl champion. There have been times that teams have gone back-to-back, and then the third season, something big happens. This is one massive example, and how a sack brought a butterfly effect to one West Coast team in particular. This is the story of the 1990 San Francisco 49ers. So get ready. I said, are you ready? Are you ready for some Cutter What If NFL football? A weekend invasion! Yeah, it's Cutter talking to you live. We got the hits and the misses. So come join me for all the fun. All the rowdy friends come in. It's the weekend, y'all. Are you ready? Yeah, let's do this, baby. Yes. So the history of the San Francisco 49ers is convoluted, but they didn't start in the NFL nor the AFL. They started in the AAFC, the All American Football Conference, which in the late 40s was a massive competitor with those pesky NFL teams and all that. The AAFC actually did pretty well, getting 4 teams to the NFL in 1950, including the powerful Cleveland Browns. But I bet you didn't remember that the San Francisco 49ers were in the AAFC and were merged into the NFL. I don't blame you. But anyway, San Francisco had some great players. Y.A. Tittle, when he was a Niner, threw the alley-oop passes to R.C. Owens, and the Niners looked good. They had a massive game against the Detroit Lions in 1957. If the Niners won, then the Niners would have went to the NFL Championship and hosted the Cleveland Browns. They had a massive lead. They had a more than 20-point lead, but those pesky Lions said, no way, Jose, and ruined them. The Niners would trail on for the 60s and 70s. John Brodie would be a good quarterback for them. The Niners were looking for good running backs and all that. They were not really a good team in the 70s. Then they decided in the third round to take this guy from Notre Dame by the name of Joe Montana to be the new pivot, and he helped the Niners beat the Saints in 1980. I know that it's apropos because, the Saints sucked, but the Saints had a 35-7 lead on those pesky Niners and couldn't finish the job. Well, the Saints only won one game that year. So the Niners with Joe Montana did their job. And then, things went from there. Bill Walsh brought in the West Coast offense. Roger Craig would be the running back that they all needed. The recent wide receivers and tight ends and all that. They did win the Super Bowl in 1984, beating Dan Marino for their second title of the 80s after beating the Bengals in 1982. But their massive move was a massive pick that the Patriots gave them in the third round, and they took Jerry freaking Rice out of freaking nowhere. Nobody knew about Jerry Rice. I mean, after all, he came from Mississippi Valley State. So what ends up happening is that Rice redefined being a wide receiver alongside John Taylor and a few other people. The Niners would go on to win yet another Super Bowl in 1989, their third Super Bowl, beating the Bengals thanks to Montana to Taylor. And then a fourth Super Bowl the next year against the Broncos, in which they slaughtered them 55-10. A fifth Super Bowl followed in 1995 against the Chargers, and the Niners were riding high. I mean, The transition from Joe Montana to Steve Young was seamless in a sense. The Niners would put up Jeff Garcia, a CFL refugee, there with Terrell Owens at wide receiver, and a great defense too, of course. Shades of Ronnie Lott. So the San Francisco 49ers were a decent team in the 2000s. They made that big comeback against the Giants. We were down 38-14 to win the game and get themselves to the next round of the playoffs. The Niners would have a couple key plays from quarterback to wide receiver. Like Alex Smith was drafted first overall in 2005, and he made a big play for the Niners. Colin Kaepernick would be a great quarterback, rushing quarterback, and help the Niners get to the Super Bowl in 2013. Unfortunately for them, they would fall flat to the um, Baltimore Ravens. They made a second half comeback but failed. So anyway, the Niners have been off and on. Brock Purdy has been good when he's healthy. Christian McCaffrey is the same thing, good when he's healthy. So when the Niners are there, they're good when they're healthy, and that's the truth. So anyhow, let's take a look at the 1990 San Francisco 49ers. So the San Francisco 49ers, this was their 41st franchise season in the NFL and 45th overall. Everyone thought that the Niners were going to win the Super Bowl. They beat the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. It was huge because the Niners and Giants were the two best teams in the NFL and would have had to bump each other in the NFL NFC title game. This was the season in which the Niners completed their 18 straight road victories, which was hard to do. Winning on the road is just not easy. Jerry Rice put up 100 catches, becoming the fourth receiver to do so. The Niners won their division title for another season, 5 straight. They had won 15 straight games in the regular season. Their last 5 games in 1989, and the first 10 in 1990. The Niners would lose in the final seconds of the NFC title game. Following the season, the Niners left Roger Craig and Ronnie Lott unprotected, and through Plan B free agency, they both went to the Raiders. So the Niners lost Roger Craig. They did pick up Ricky Waters in the draft, I think the next year or something like that. And Ronnie Lott, a good defender, gone to the Raiders. Joe Montana would be on the roster for a few more years. But because of his elbow, because he had a massive elbow injury in relation to the Leonard Marshall hit, this would be pretty much his last ride. Montana had a $4 million salary. In the 1990 draft, they took Eric Davis, a cornerback from Jacksonville State. It would be good. Dexter Carter would be okay. So anyway, the 1999ers. Jim Van Horst and Fred Smerlas and Eric Wright and Mike Sherrard were on IR, which was bad in a sense. Quarterbacks were Joe Montana and Steve Young. It was kind of weird how Montana and Young can coincide with each other. They both were great quarterbacks on the same team. Like Montana was the unprecedented #1, but when they brought Steve Young in from Tampa in 1986, it was to give Montana a bit of a boost. Anyway, Roger Craig at running back alongside Dexter Carter, Tom Rathman, Spencer Tillman, even. Wide receivers, they had Jerry Rice and John Taylor, among others. Brad Jones and Wesley Walls at tight end. Harris Barton, Guy McIntyre, Bubba Paris, Jesse Sapulu, and Stevie Wells, your offensive line. Your defensive line. Jim Burt, Michael Carter, Kevin Fegan, Pierce Holt, and all of them. Linebackers, Keith DeLon, Charles Haley, Matt Millen, Bill Romanowski, and Keena Turner. Defensive backs, Eric Davis, Don Griffin, Ronnie Lott, and Dave Waymer. Our special teams, Mike Hofer, kicker, and Barry Hilton, your puncher. Yeah, they started off 10-0, beating New Orleans, Washington, Atlanta, Houston, Atlanta again, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Green Bay, Dallas, and Tampa before the LA Rams came into Candlestick and beat them. They would lose to the Saints at home as well. They were 14-2. After they were 8-0 on the road. Jerry Rice had a 5-touchdown day against the Falcons. The Giants and Niners were both 10-1. They played on Monday Night Football, and the Niners won a awful game 7-3. It was actually the second highest rated Monday Night Football game at the whole time. I can probably guess what the other one was. Anyway, the Niners were 14-2. The Saints were 8-8 and snuck in as a 6th seed in the last spot. So they would go to the wild card round. The Niners had a bye, and then they would play on CBS. Remember, when CBS had the NFC instead of the AFC, Dick Stockton and Merlin Olsen did the game for CBS, which was shocking because, Dick Stockton. I'm thinking Dick Enberg. Well, anyway, Merlin Olsen went to CBS. In a light rain on a Saturday afternoon, Washington did score the first 10 points. They were up 10-7. Unfortunately for him, unfortunately for the Redskins, they couldn't come back, and the Niners won 28-10. So the NFC title game afternoon, everyone knew that the Niners or Giants, the winner would face the Bills, because earlier in the day the Bills crushed the Raiders 51-3 in the AFC title game. So passing clouds happened, but it stayed cool, calm, and collective. The teams were fighting tooth and nail. It was 13-9 after 3 quarters and all that. There were a couple of big plays that day. Leonard Marshall fell on a play, but Joe Montana still had the ball, and then he smacked Joe Montana, forced him to fumble. No, fortunately, the Niners recovered that fumble, but Leonard Marshall knocked Montana out of the game. Steve Young was in, and he was basically told, just give it to Roger Craig to run the ball. Unfortunately, Craig fumbled with 2.5 minutes left. And then the Giants went down the field, and Matt Barr from 42 yards snuck it between the uprights. As Barr's 5 field goals were the only points the Giants needed, and all of that. And Pat Summerall said, there will be no three-peat. Weirdly enough, the Niners would win 10 games the next year, but not make the Super Bowl, which was kind of shocking. But that's what happens sometimes. So anyway, let's talk about what if the 49ers actually won that NFC title game and faced the Bills in the Super Bowl? What would happen? Anyhow, the Bills and the Niners battling each other. We don't touch the AFC side of things. So the Buffalo Bills went to the Super Bowl at 13-3. The Niners are the home team because I believe the NFC was the home team in this one. So that means that San Francisco did their job. So Joe Montana, Roger Craig, and all that. Of course, the what if is what if Montana was not injured? I guess I could kind of do what if Montana. If Montana was not hurt, and one if he was hurt. I guess I can do that. In the one that Joe Montana is healthy as a horse, Buffalo scored the first touchdown on a 10-play, 79-yard drive as Furman Thomas did a fantastic draw play, scoring the 7 yards for the touchdown, but they missed the extra point because it was blocked. It would be 6-0 Buffalo to 2 quarters, excuse me. San Fran caught the ball to start the third quarter, but Leonard Smith made it there. Kofor goes through the uprights to make it 6-3, and then Buffalo gets the kickoff and somehow gets it to the 4-yard line. And then Reed easily catches a touchdown pass. They go for 1 and make it 13-3. And then Norwood right down the pike to make it 16-3. So it looks like Buffalo's got the Super Bowl. Kofor goes from 44 yards and it's no good. So Buffalo knows they got it. Just hold it there. And then they were stuck at their own 2-yard line to start to drive it with 8:16 left. And all that. Buffalo made an incidental face mask call and all that. They were pounding the ball up the middle. On 3rd and 6 from the 42 of Buffalo, Montana hits Jones down the field, touchdown. Well, almost a touchdown, and then Dexter Carter runs it in for a touchdown and makes the extra point to make it 16-10. Buffalo went 3 and out, And then in the final 2 minutes, Montana hits Rice for a 35-yard play on 3rd and 3. On 4th and 7 with a minute 9 left, Buffalo got called for encroachment. So it was 4th and 2 from Buffalo's 34. Montana throws to Rice for 10 yards. A couple of draw plays later, Montana passed to John Taylor to the 13. San Fran got a false start. Montana hits Rice to make it 2nd and 4. Niners call timeout. And then, wouldn't you know it, Montana to Rice for a touchdown makes it 17-16. Buffalo tried. And then Scott Norwood came on the field. It would be a 58-yard field goal and no good. Wide right. Actually, no. No good. Wide left. And 17 for San Fran, 16 for Buffalo. So with Joe Montana recovering, they won the game as Montana the race for the winning touchdown. So yeah, Buffalo looked pretty good, but that fourth quarter, Buffalo 3 for 11 on conversions, San Fran 7 for 16. Rushing yards 140 for Buffalo, 100 for San Fran, 318 passing for San Fran, 145 for Buffalo. So Montana 23 for 32, 340 and a touchdown. Kelly 13 for 21, 159. So yeah, Furman got 93 yards, Craig 61 yards. Yeah, Brad Jones with 111 receiving yards to lead the team, which was unusual. The only interception was Leonard Smith's. Norwood made from 30, but missed from 48 and 58. Well, you can't blame him for missing the 58-yard field goal. That's hard to do. Crawford from 36, but he missed from 44. So Buffalo would have won the Super Bowl. But we are going to change the depth chart to see what if Steve Young was the starter? What would have happened? And in this scenario, the Bills would have scored. Bills would have beat the Niners with Steve Young in the lineup. So Buffalo would have had their Super Bowl by proxy. If Montana was healthy enough to play in the Super Bowl, the Niners probably would have won, which would have been funny. So yeah, 3 field goals, nothing much to talk about. Furman Thomas, player of the game. Oh, yeah. Kelly throws for 3 interceptions and still win the game. Interceptions to Griffin and 2 to Dave Waymer. It was weird. Well, nevertheless, Scott Norwood would not have been a GOAT. And that would have been great. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.